How's it going, folks? Welcome to FoundFlix. On this Ending Explained, we're looking at the recent Hulu hit, No One Will Save You, where a young woman finds solace within the walls of the home where she grew up until she's awakened one night by strange noises from unearthly intruders. Yep, aliens! First off, thank you all for submitting so many requests for this one. I do read pretty much everything you all send me, and I do pay attention. And a ton of you wanted me to cover this one, so here we are. And I can see why, because the ending is quite odd and leaves us with a ton of questions. I quite enjoyed this one, and even the idea of combining a home invasion flick with an alien invasion flick is a novel one. I appreciate how it kind of tweaks the same kind of home invader tropes, but done through the alien lens. This time it's not just some guy with a knife that's a threat, but instead mysterious and extra powerful aliens that looked ripped right out of the most classic interpretations. The mystery aspect helps keep us on our toes because we, like Brynn, don't know what these dudes are even capable of. Also impressively, the movie works with almost no dialogue over the entire runtime. So let's check out No One Will Save You, breaking down the story, including what all we learn about the aliens, as well as explaining the admittedly confusing ending. At a cabin nestled in the woods, Brynn is seen living a quiet and solitary life. It seems that leaving her home actually even causes her some distress, her practicing smiling in the mirror before soon giving up. She trots downstairs and takes in her quite impressive little town display, which appears to be a recreation of the town in which she lives. She steps outside with a sigh and spots a strange round patch of missing grass. Thinking nothing of it, she drags the hose out to water the area. In the car, she psychs herself up once more before hitting the road. She comes to a stop and gives some guy a quite pained wave. He doesn't respond whatsoever, coldly turning away uninterested. In town, they're not much more friendly, and she even hides her face when passing by others. We're not exactly sure why yet, but it definitely looks like the town has completely shunned Brynn. She pays a visit to her mother's grave, and she has passed quite recently. She tries once more in earnest to interact with some folks, but they turn silent and stare her down. Another couple catches her eyes, and she hides behind a car to spy on them, and the woman caresses the man's face. Brynn starts getting overwhelmed at the sight and does her best to hold back her emotions. Out at the lakeside, she writes a letter to Maud detailing that she saw her parents, must have been who she was spying on. A mail truck approaches, and she perks up with a big smile. The driver tosses out the package carelessly like a basketball to cheers from no one. She settles back into her solo routine and sets out some feet pattern to learn how to dance, accompanied by a particular old tune. The package was yet another building for her growing tiny city, which she nestles into its place. The days are blending together, she continues in the letter to Maud. I can't believe it's been 10 years. She really does enjoy her solitude, and even when the phone rings, she immediately hangs it up. No outside world for me, thank you. She concludes her letter to Maud, lamenting that she wishes that she could try something that she's made, and doesn't think she can ever forgive herself. There's a photo of the two of them together along with BFF inscribed. Sure sounds like there was some kind of accident that involved her demise. She settles into bed with a book before giving into sleep. Another peaceful day done. Well, that peace is short-lived. We float around the house hearing a low droning, and it goes right for the roof. A creature is heard humming to themselves, and they click on all the lights at once, and the record she was dancing to resumes. Brynn is still asleep, and the lights cut back to darkness. A loud clatter stirs her awake, spotting something digging through the trash cans. She goes to investigate, finding the light switch doesn't work. Downstairs, she sees the front door is wide open, swaying in the breeze. Footsteps approach, and the creature wanders in, clicking and making other weird noises. She freaks and tries to stay silent. It zips back outside, seeing its shadow pass by on the window. Brynn carefully steps back and lands right on a creaky floorboard. The noise draws the creature back, growling and scampering inside. She retreats to her room and makes even more telltale noises. Jeez, try to stay quiet, lady. We hear the creature rapidly approaching, and it flings the door open just as she leaps to the other side of the bed. She slinks under the mattress, and the creature climbs right on top, sniffing curiously. We also see its finger-like feet, with each tendril operating on its own. It lets out a loud bellow, perhaps a signal to others, and it scampers out the window. Brynn locks it up and takes a moment to catch her breath. Like, yeah, that actually happened. Alien dude coming up in my shit. She goes to search the house, hearing thuds from overhead. It must be on the roof. She makes a break for it, hearing its footsteps rapidly approaching. She manages to close the door and lock it, and the alien responds by messing with the electricity again. She hurriedly unplugs the TV and slams the record player closed to stop it. Her little village is still rapidly blinking, and after unplugging that too, the creature lets out another irritated growl. About to make a phone call, a loud tone takes over, and the fridge doors start opening and closing on their own. She spots it coming down the stairs and finds a spot to hide. The creature comes to the still hanging receiver, and to her surprise, hangs it up. up, seeing its obscured visage in the metal. It sees her too, flinging the door and trapping her behind it. Well, they definitely have telekinetic powers too, good to know. It stomps over, seeing its finger feet right there. It reaches its long fingers over the top, Brynn totally freaking out. It starts to poke its head over, and she shoves the door back, knocking the alien away. But this also pisses it off, launching a telekinetic assault, making stuff go haywire and flying all over the daggum place. The door launches right off its hinges and smacks her in the face. She painfully crawls away as the creature rounds the corner. It turns the lights back on and sends a table flying, destroying most of her village. It can pull her as well, dragging her along the floor. It spins her a bunch of times and turns her to face it, getting a real close look at the very classic alien design, gray, big eyes and all that. She gets it in the head with a piece from a building. It gurgles and soon slumps over dead. Well, congrats, Brynn, you killed your first alien. She's in disbelief at the whole situation and stays frozen in the same spot until the next morning, still looking shell-shocked. She double checks to make extra certain that it's still dead and throws a blanket over its corpse. She tries the phone again, but the line is now completely dead. The attack has left all the electricity permanently zapped in the house, also including her Subaru to her chagrin. With no easy escape, she gets cleaned up and pushes a couch in front of the door hole to cover, well, some of it. Brynn pedals off on her bike and soon encounters a distressing sight. The mail truck from earlier now overturned and smoking, and there's no sign of the driver whatsoever. As she continues towards town, we notice more and more of those circular patterns in the grass, seeming that there's a lot more than one of these guys around. It hasn't spread that far yet, as everyone in town is still going on with their lives as normal. At the police station, she bumps into the couple from before, Maud's parents. You can cut the tension with a knife, and Brynn starts stammering to speak. She doesn't even get the chance, the lady spitting right in her face before she gets a word out. Now we really get that whatever exactly happened to Maud, her parents at least blame Brynn entirely for it, and clearly have not forgiven her. Brynn tries to hold back the waterworks, tearing up while unlocking her bike. She can't hold it back, and she breaks down in tears, seeing how raw that pain of losing Maud still is 10 years later. Then a potential of hope drives right by in the form of a bus. Maybe she can get out of town before things get too nuts. Yet as they begin to travel from above, we see there are many of the circle patterns, meaning the invasion is already a lot bigger than she realizes. This proves true quite quickly, hearing the mailman wheezing amongst the other passengers. He grabs her by the shoulder and grunts strange sounds into her ear. She shoves him away and he crawls over the top of the seats. Another woman grabs at her leg and the driver finally notices the commotion. He slams on the brakes, knocking the mailman on his ass, but it doesn't slow him down much, cracking his spine and getting right back to his feet. Brynn bolts off the bus with the dude following after. Making it to a private property line, we hear a creature what almost sounds like humming, and it's even slightly reminiscent of the song that Brynn was dancing to. Maybe it's a fan. She tries a local church, finding the doors locked. Geez, thanks for the open arms, guys. She glances over to a graveyard nearby and pays a visit to her old pal Maud's memorial. The wind suddenly picks up and monstrous storm clouds roll in. She attempts to outrun them, but it's not possible, as they eventually cover the entire sky. At another house, she finds a bunch of people all standing together with their arms outstretched towards the cloud. They must be like the mailman, and seeing some kind of creature crawl around in a guy's throat, this must be what kind of zombifies the people, and also turns them into part of the alien's hive mind kind of thing going on. They all notice her, creepily turning all at once, and she splits, also seeing a classic saucer outline of their spaceship hiding in the clouds. She winds up back where she started and checks on her dead alien pal. He's still there, and she's overtaken by a foul smell. She notices a trail of slime emanating from its body and see that it must have come from the alien's mouth. No doubt the same thing also in the zombified humans. She follows the slime trail but doesn't find anything. The storm clouds are really raging now and they converge right at her location. Knowing things are about to get real serious, she calms herself and looks more determined to stand her ground. She prepares all around the house, locking the shutters, getting pots of boiling water on, anything that will help against the impending invasion. When drawing the curtains, a white light starts to glow brightly outside, and when passing through in the loft, a spotlight whizzes by. When she comes downstairs, the nails start popping themselves off one by one from her blanket barrier. It bursts off, giving way to an overpowering light. The couch is tossed away, and a force lifts the alien's body, levitating it right out the front door in a pretty bizarre looking display. The big beam goes out, and the orange searchlight returns. She makes it down to the basement just as another alien leaps down. The light follows her downstairs and comes back with much more intensity. The creature comes down, stopping right by her hiding spot. She sneaks to another spot, staying out of its sight, and grabs some scissors. As it searches further, she moves under a table and knocks something off. Man, she's clumsy. She spins back and the alien is right there. Ah! It force pushes the table at her and disarms her with a flick of the wrist. It rises, cracking its bones, and notices that she's holding a picture of her and Maud. It tries to pull it away, and Brynn holds on as long as possible. Yet it manages to snatch it away, staring at it in befuddlement, as though trying to understand why this is so important to her. While it's learning about the human condition, Brynn runs back upstairs. There's another slightly different alien waiting for her with longer arms and short legs, almost monkey-ish. She bites into its little alien arm and the creature pulls away. It spits out alien goo at her and nurses its wound. She gets to the boiling pots, launching every one of them at the alien. It lunges at her with its arms outstretched, and the super light is unleashed, sticking the pot to the wall. Brynn backs up cautiously into another room. The creature leaps onto the wall and tears the door to shreds with vicious efficiency. She goes for the window, but it drags her back in. A few whaps from a broom keep it back, which the alien angrily snaps. It attacks, and she jabs it with the sharpened handle. Just to make sure it's dead, she pounds the door on its head a few times for good measure. Man, she's getting good at this, though there's only more weirdly shaped alien monsters awaiting her. Glowing eyes peek out over the roof, warbling her song. It lifts its long arms into the air, kind of a spider guy, I guess. It chases her into the woods, where she runs into another old friend, the delivery dude. He overpowers her, and a silver disc crests the horizon. Longlegs is pleased, gesturing to it with its arms, spelling something maybe? It stops right above them, and the rings of the shape illuminate in a pattern. She kicks the guy away just as the tractor beam is launched, trapping him inside and snapping his back. It starts to lift him into the air, but they don't want him apparently, sending him plummeting back to the earth. The ship then disconnects into smaller pieces and flies away. Brynn hoofs it, and the creature pursues her, wrecking everything in its path. It does prove a bit clumsy though. When trying to climb down her house, it comically slips. Upside down, it shrieks and attacks. Brynn seeks refuge in the car, and it smashes right through it. She's able to trap it inside, one of its limbs getting stuck in the floorboards. She takes a lighter and uses it to ignite the gas, setting the monster ablaze. This draws the big beam back, circling around the car. It races after her until she gets back inside. The light passes, and the droning fades away. Yet the guy from the basement is still there. It tracks her to her room, peering with its big old eyes through a crack in the door. It scans around the cluttered area, seeing several letters written to Maud hung about. It moves on to several photos of the girls, and again seems to be trying to comprehend the meaning of the display. She tries to get the jump on it from behind, but the critter sees it coming, cracking her wrist and launching her right through the wall. She gets to her feet, and the alien contorts its body back towards her, almost as though they don't have any bones, just a big old jello blob. In another room, the light finally gets her, this one red, which traps her in place. It flings her up to the ceiling, lets her go, and just about to hit the ground, turns on again. After messing with her a bit more, it pins her straight to the ceiling. The alien saunters up to her, making weird chittering, almost singing noises. Its eyes roll back, and it starts to gag as though having a hairball. A small parcel is vomited out, a mass of tentacles that unwrap, going right for her mouth. It growls, forcing her mouth open, and it slithers into her orifice. Her eye goes cocked, and she screams in bed in the morning. Like, did that really happen? After a moment, she assumes that it must have just been a bad dream, chuckling to herself in relief. It had to have been a dream, right? As her house is all put back together, even including her tiny village. Although it appears this is actually a dream, hearing someone outside calling for Maud. An obscured figure of Maud appears, bringing Brynn to her knees in disbelief. She takes a seat down next to her, and Brynn strokes her hair, giving her a tearful apology. Things start getting shaky and more distorted. Maud tells her sorry and begins screeching like the aliens. Brynn reaches down her throat and yanks out the creature, now back to reality, and now we see a bit more about how that tentacle thing works exactly. It obviously attaches to your brain and can see everything in there. Then it can create its own realities in the host brain based on what we see to lock them in a happy moment perhaps, leaving them zombified and under the alien's control. A loud vibrating takes over, and the ship zips right back to her. It turns on the beam to retrieve the tentacle guy, making out another shadow in the light. It appears to be taking on a familiar shape, creating a copy of Brynn, and the creature crawls into the double's mouth. It just kind of stands there staring at her, allowing her to flee. There's really nowhere to run at this point. Seeing in the sky, there's tons of ships floating all around this bitch. Continuing to show us their strange fascination with Brynn, she comes to a surprising face out in the woods. Her own! Her doppel has stabbed her in the gut, taking her in her arms. She pushes her back and gets her in the neck with a box cutter. Faux Brynn falls to the ground, and Brynn takes herself in her arms, cradling her as she fades away, even sobbing when she's gone. Obviously bringing up some old memories there. Back to stumbling through the foggy trees, the warbling is heard, and Longlegs emerges from the mist. It throws its arms up and roars. The light tunnel appears, and she's quickly whisked on board the craft. She finds herself in a massive dark chamber, still trapped in the light tunnel. Several aliens surround her and reach out their long fingers, tapping her on the forehead. Once more, they are intending to explore her mind, and one pivotal moment in particular. She's in a black void with garbled chatter and appears back in her house. She's surprised to see her mom and her younger self putting a little house together. Must be why Brynn keeps doing it, because it reminded her of good times with her mom. The light beam freezes them in place and Maud trots through. Brynn follows after outside, the lights ebbing between police car red and blue. The cops are also all frozen, including her sheriff dad looking destroyed. She falls to the ground and is brought to that moment with Maud. The two girls are arguing and Maud shoves her BFF to the ground. She feels for a rock and, knowing what's coming, older Brynn shrieks for her to stop. Well, there's no changing the past, and Lil Brynn whacks her friend in the face with a rock, presumably killing her. So it was kind of an accident, but also is definitely Brynn's fault. Now really getting why she has held on to this guilt for so long. She's brought back to the void where her younger self is writing a letter to Maud, kicking off a routine that she continues to this day, acting as a way to kind of keep Maud still alive in her mind. Brynn reaches out a hand to her younger self, and they lock eyes. The beam is back, and the longing gaze between them continues, and a kind of relief appears to take over Brynn's face. The alien observers watch curiously from the sidelines. Tears streaming down her face, Brynn is returned to the main chamber. The aliens chitter back and forth in discussion about what to do with her. One starts chanting, the noise emanating throughout the whole ship, and they stare upwards with glowing eyes. The ceiling starts rumbling as though in response, and the light starts sucking up. The aliens croak at her, and she falls back through the light, getting dumped right back where she was taken. Lights of a variety of colors dance over her face, and Brynn chuckles to herself. Perhaps she finally has some closure over what happened. Thanks, aliens! Now, in sharp contrast to earlier when she was getting ready in the mirror, she bears a genuine smile. As she rides her bike, the happiness remains very different from before. She hangs up a birdhouse waving to other folks, and this time they do wave back, still all alien zombified. At a function in town, Brynn finally gets to show off her dance moves, playfully switching partners with other dancers. She twinkle toes her way right up to the camera, giving a big flourish with a smile. And we see the ships are still lingering up in the sky. So they didn't go anywhere after all, and it certainly looks like their invasion was a resounding success. Yeah, definitely a weird way that things turn out. Probably the biggest question here that really does tie into everything else story-wise: why did the aliens let her go and live her life rather than becoming part of the enslaved masses? I think a lot of it has to do with the alien creatures finding Brynn interesting. They aren't just here to murder everyone, and at points it really seems the various creatures are trying to understand Brynn's grief. We don't really get too many details on the alien society, but there is some kind of society going on there. It almost seems like there's a kind of faith that is actually driving their mission. This is what they are supposed to do, taking over Earth. Director Brian Duffield expands on the subtext scene here, which backs this all up. They don't have grief in their society, and they don't mourn their dead. I mean, they don't even really have to die. Just pop another tentacle dude in there. They don't have bones or nothing. Just like an empty shell to implant the thing into. So with Brynn, they are frustrated yet fascinated, trying to understand what her deal is. It's interesting to them that she feels so bad about what happened. What is this, you know? As they discover more about Brynn and her situation, it appears that they are affected by just how profoundly human that place of grief is. Something that is entirely foreign to them and their species. It also does feel like in that moment when they're all reaching towards the light, it's kind of asking their own higher power how to proceed. It then makes the choice to allow her to go back to world unscathed. I mean, they already took it over anyway. What's the harm really, you know? She's meaningless to their grander planetary conquest. However, conversely, this whole experience has had a profound impact on Brynn. As we saw at the beginning, Brynn was still struggling with what happened to Maud, and especially after losing her mother, appears to have no one left in her life. And of course, the people in town have completely outcast her as well, making her even more kind of trapped in her own little world, whether she likes it or not. Sure, she does seem to enjoy it for the most part, but we see there is still real pain that she is experiencing, and she cannot let go of her grief. Then the aliens come in and start doing their little experiments in an attempt to understand her. What they actually end up doing is forcing her to confront herself as well as the past, and give her the perfect opportunity to face as well as finally get over her guilt that has put her life on hold for so long. As we see at the end, Brynn is a changed person, now actually happy, as well as actually wanting to leave her home. It also helps that she fits in better with the now zombified folks, as there's no more judgment from them as before. Seems that they don't talk either, which I'm sure Brynn appreciates as well. The point is, sure, she might not mean much to the aliens overall, but the journey they sent her on had a fundamental impact on Brynn and changed her. No one will save you indeed. Gotta save yourself. With that, we reach the conclusion of this Ending Explained for No One Will Save You. But don't forget, before we go, you can send me requests for any movies or TV shows you'd like to see me explain by sending them my way on any of my social media accounts at FoundFlix. You know I read them. What did you think of No One Will Save You and its ending? What's your interpretation of the story? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.